Hello, welcome to the Women in Data Science series of the Shelley Show. I'm Shailendra and you're watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Hope you're safe and maintaining the social distancing. It is very important for all of us. Thank you so much for all the love that you've given to the show, and where we're celebrating the ladies in the data science space, the women in data science. I've seen a huge viewership of this series across all the social media platforms, and it is a great feeling to myself. Every fortnight, we bring in ladies of data science to this platform and understand their point of view from the data science world. If you know anyone, if you know any leading data science lady, then please mention their name in the comment section and we'll try to bring them there. Okay, let me not waste any time and quickly bring the guests to you. My first guest is Hema Prasad. Hema has delivered large-scale data and analytics programs, assisting businesses in building, transforming, and enhancing their data and digital landscapes. With a career spanning 2 decades in the US, India, and Australia, she draws on vast experience leading large cross-functional teams across multiple shores for Fortune 100 companies. Hema holds a degree in electronics and computer applications, majoring in data and digital architecture. Hema is a Stanford Women in Data Science Ambassador and as well as executive board member of Women in Big Data. Data is her calling. So let's not waste time and bring Hema to the session. Hi, Hema.
Hi, Shailendra. It's my pleasure being on the show. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show. Give me a minute and I'll bring other guests as well. So guys, for you to view this episode and other sessions that I run in Emerging Technologies Live, I would request you to follow me so that you can be alerted when a live session is on. This gives you an opportunity to ask questions directly to people like Hema and others, as we say. And, so please press the follow button on LinkedIn, the follow button on Twitter, and subscribe button on YouTube with the bell icon so that you can be alerted. Okay, my second guest is Goda Ramkumar. Goda ranked as one of the top 10 data scientists in India by Analytics India magazine in 2018. And she's currently the principal data scientist at Swiggy, focusing on core logistics. Prior to this, she was general manager data science at X to 10X. And we need to talk about that as well. What does that mean? Very cute title, establishing data science journey and practice in the startup ecosystem. She was at Ola for 2 years as principal data scientist, where she led the machine learning and optimization algorithms behind pricing and matching. She has several publications and presentations in industry journals and academic conferences. She holds an undergraduate and master's degree from IIT Madras. So we've got an IIT in here. Let's bring her in. Hi, Goda. Welcome to Women in Data Science. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. And finally, we have Liesl Yearsley, CEO of Agile. But there's a little glitch. Liesl was asked to self-isolate by the doctors last night, so she couldn't make it to the session. Apologies from her. So we will stick with these 2 ladies today, and let's have a conversation with them. So girls, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, Shailendra. How are you? How are you, Goda? Nice to meet you.
Hey, thanks, Hema. How have you been doing?
Great, thanks.
Very good. So the structure of this session is around processes, skills, and use cases and success stories that you've got. So let's start with the processes. So girls, you tell me, and both of you, and if I look at it, you've worked in the corporate sector and you worked in the consulting environment as well. Hema, your background comes with KPMG as the consulting, and then and you were prior to that Westpac as working at the corporate.
Yeah, that's right.
Goda, for you, for people who do not know Swiggy, people know Ola, I think, but people who do not know Swiggy, can you give us a bit of a background of what Swiggy is, and then we'll come to the other parts of processes?
So Swiggy is the India's biggest convenience player. So we started off as hunger saviors delivering food,
Mhm.
uh, and now we are kind of, since last year we have been the convenience players. It's about anything that you want at your doorstep, right from your grocery, and especially in these COVID times, it has been helping a lot. So think about from morning to night and what all convenience means to you. Swiggy is kind of getting into that space, right? So it's the delivering convenience to a billion Indians is our mission.
Okay. So what we've seen and what we're talking about here is Swiggy. We've talked about a bank, Westpac, and so girls, what have you seen in the in your environment? Is does data science have a embedded process? What you've seen, or is it hit and trial? Which when I started my career, or when I saw that 12 years ago, it was all hit and trial. We used to try this out and try that out. Something will work, and something will be returning big dollars and something won't be. So, do you guys have a end-to-end process set up already?
I
Hema,
wish I wish we had that level of maturity, especially in the data science phase. But Shailendra, I think you can pretty much relate to about 2 decades ago when probably we started our careers, took the small steps in the data space. And I think even in the world of business intelligence and the normal, looking back type of analytics, there's still a lot of maturity to be achieved. And we need to acknowledge the fact that data science is still a pretty young and growing field. So, unfortunately, no such silver bullet end to end process exists. And data science is pretty unique in that there are different facets of an organization that must come together and work as one team to deliver the value in data science. So, what I'm exactly talking about here is the data science team in itself may think that they have a well defined process in terms of acquiring the data, curating it, and then analyzing the data and building the models and then putting out the insights for consumption. So that seems to be pretty simple. But when you overlay the other aspects of data, which is governance, the quality, validation, um, operationalization of a model, so that you can constantly measure the validity and the relevance of the model. And if needed, you can go back and tweak it. So all of these have to be embedded nicely in a life cycle journey for the model and for the data that feeds it. And if you ask me, we are still taking baby steps in the data science processes world. Um, I also think that it is not possible for us to create a single silver bullet sort of process that will satisfy all of the organizations, because the process needs to be created considering the context of the organization, the business, the people, the technology, and everything that underpins an organization has to go into to building and evolving a process. So in that sense, we are still doing a lot of hit and trial ways of working in the data science field. But the most important thing is, having taken those baby steps, a lot of organizations are beginning to understand the value of data science, and seeing the small golden nuggets being delivered here and there. So they're all trying to come together as a team and recognize that data science as a field needs the focus and the rigor in order for it to start producing tangible business benefits. So at this stage, it's still very much hit and trial, but I think people are trying to consider data science a bit more seriously than they did, in the last few years.
Okay, and that is both in the consulting environment and the corporate sector that you've seen, or is it only you talking consulting only?
Look, consulting is not any different because at the end of the day, you consult for the clients. I think it's not any different from being at a client place directly or, helping them through the consulting roles that you hold. So I'm talking from a generic perspective of sitting at client places directly employed by them or consulting for them. You may see slightly higher levels of maturity in the financial services industries because they have been heavily, the subject of governance and regulatory requirements, as in like the CDR, GDPR earlier, and then now CDR, leading to things like open banking and the modern payments platform. So they have been forced to think a bit faster in the data science processes because otherwise they're going to miss out the regulatory deadlines. But if you look at the other industries like retail, telco, or whatever, they are trying to follow suit because obviously the open data world is going to consume the non-financial services industry as well, as in telco, retail, and everything, because open data seems to be the future going forward. So in that sense, uh, what I'm trying to say is we're not going to escape, focusing on the process at any point in time. It's going to happen either today or tomorrow, but the world of regulatory demands is going to determine the speed at which you're going to move forward and evolve and build your process.
Okay. Goda, what have you seen in the market in India? Because I think we should also clarify that Hema has worked recently in Australia, and Goda, you've been focused only on India, right, for a long period of time.
Yeah,
So
and
how?
mostly startup ecosystem.
Okay, okay. So tell us, how do you see processes evolving in the data science space?
So I have a slightly different take on that. So at Text to 10x, when I was a consultant working with several startups, actually I was forced to think what is the right process to be set up to make data science very effective, right? So as part of that, if we kind of break it down, the processes start right from getting the clarity of where should the focus of the data science function be, what should the problems that need to be solved, till the point of how do you really deploy something into production and measure its impact. It's kind of the entire life cycle and the processes at each step that you require. So there are certain frameworks that we put into place, and when I came into Swiggy, I was really happy and pleasantly surprised to see most of those processes in place, right? So to start off with, when we talk about gaining clarity on what problems need to be solved, there are frameworks like like drivetrain framework, which is kind of a framework to walk back from the goal of the business to how does it break down into really the decision problems that data needs to kind of empower, right? And to really execute on that, simple processes of having OKRs so that all the functions come together, whether it's data science, engineering, analytics, product, because nothing can be delivered in isolation when it comes to data, right? So how to make everyone aligned and work as a pod trying to achieve a certain goal. OKRs help a lot in kind of bringing that into execution. And then it comes to whether you have the practices and the platforms to empower it in terms of, for you to deploy models, do you have platforms that have the real time and historic feature stores, and platforms to deploy the model and retrain it, test it from time to time, and experimentation platform for measurement. I think from that perspective, Swiggy is really in a good mature place from my understanding of the startup ecosystem.
Okay. Uh, yeah, Hema?
Yeah, just to add on to that's a good point, Goda. I think the discrimination really comes in terms of, the size and the nature of the organization. It's really easy in startups, right? And if you look at even larger organizations that have been in the business for decades, data science in itself can exist as a startup within a large enterprise, but only when it tries to embed into the different functions that exist. Like I said, quality, governance,
Right.
setting up the right operating model, and to integrate it with different lines of businesses in order to create a mutually beneficial data science discipline. That is where it becomes, quite cumbersome to do the processes and to make sure that people can align and they can come together. And in large enterprises, the other problem is data science is not set up as a new practice, but something else rather exists to deliver the data inputs. I'm not here to argue about the quality of those inputs and the maturity of those practices, but it's more like taking the attention away from some sort of data function that exists and then introducing a new concept called data science and making people trust that
Right.
whatever we had in data world is pretty old. Data science is the new silver bullet. It's going to solve your problems. Do you want to work with us? So that's some really bigger challenge for larger enterprises than with the startups.
Right.
Well, I also think, and I think you guys have mentioned it right, but in large corporates, I think the problem is about defining the problem itself, because I think it's a biggest challenge for the business to say what are they looking for, and what I've seen in the past as well, that most of the people, they say, give me the data and I'll show you something, where there is
Yeah.
no final outcome that I'm looking to achieve, which does not help in building that kind of confidence with the business who's going to execute it finally. because if you build a very good model and you don't get it executed, what's the point of doing it, right? So to do all of that, it is important for the organizations to understand that they need to be bringing the business together, and they need to understand that they need to explain those problems in plain English, which is not always there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that is true in a good lot of organizations, because it looks like searching for a needle in the haystack most of the times. And not just with data science, but with the generic data field, we must know what problem we are trying to solve, and we must practically run through in our minds and with all the SMEs together, like what is the best way to solve the problem. And then you seek the help of concepts and tools like data science, and you want a Jupyter notebook, or Alteryx, or whatever. That comes secondary. But what happens in a lot of organizations is they think they can invest in a Rolls Royce and just buy and park it, and the Rolls Royce is going to wonderfully solve all the problems for them. But as you rightly said, that's not the case. We need to know. Just like in any other strategy, the data science strategy also needs to feed top down from the organizational strategy. So, what are the strategic business objectives? What is my business focusing on in the upcoming 1, 2, or 3 years? And how does data science as a capability help in addressing the problems? And based on that, you pick up individual problems at granular levels, and try to answer the questions. And all of it relates back to the quality of data that you feed into it. Because you can have a wonderful team of data scientists and you can have a wonderfully mature process. But if you're not treating data as an organizational asset, if you don't give the due respect to data, then the output you're going to get is going to be only as good as the data that goes into it. So this is where, as Goda also highlighted, irrespective of whether it's a startup or a large enterprise, data must be given its due diligence, and we must be clear. People who drive the data science initiatives, people who sponsor the data science initiatives, they must be completely aligned. They must understand the problem that's being solved, and then bring in the experts such as the data scientists and the modelers and everybody to work as a team and solve the problem. So this is where the single team approach or the one team approach is more relevant to data science, because you just can't hire a team of data scientists and give them a problem statement that's Greek and Latin, and then ask them to solve, because it's not going to help anything. They will be extraordinarily brilliant in identifying, a particular model, a particular technique, regression, or whatever, random forest, whatever techniques. But how will they link it to the business? That's where the business people need to be closely connected with the data scientists in defining and leading the way towards solving the problem.
Okay.
Right. I think the important point that Hema made is, just the direction of application of data science, going from data to problems versus problems to data. Like usually it starts off with, we have data, what problem can we solve? It should rather be the reverse. If we have a problem,
Yes.
can we solve it through data? Right?
Yeah.
No,
Well
absolutely. I think that business integration needs to happen right at the beginning of the project, or that particular discussion, because I've heard lots of time people saying that, oh, it's gobbledygook to me from business point of view, right? I don't know what it means. But if they don't get involved, they don't get engaged, the chances are that something will come out as a result, which was a decision taken by the business deliberately at some point in time, and we are highlighting it and saying, well, yeah, that's a great thing that we found out. But actually, business would when you show it to business, say, yeah, we did that. We did that as an activity, and now you're calling it an outcome. It's not, because so the involvement of the business right from day one, I think, is very important, and that plays a key role in data science. And I've also heard at times people saying, oh, this is a problem statement, go in the corner, sit down there and solve that problem and come back and when the problem is solved. I don't think that is going to work as well, because you need to understand what business is doing. So business needs to embrace the data science unit. One question I want to ask both of you, when you work in the corporate sector and you work in Swiggy, Goda, where does the data science team sit? Does it sit in IT, or does it sit in business?
So we sit along with the engineering team. We are all on the same floor.
Okay.
And I've
But
seen it work the same way at Ola as well.
where do you report into? Do you report into the IT division, or is it some part of business?
So in startups, it's actually like there's no term of IT itself. It's more of technology, engineering, and usually reports into CTO.
Okay. And Hema, where have you seen data science teams sitting? In the
I've
IT?
seen I've seen mixed, organizational structures, and sometimes I've seen organizations start with pushing everything as IT, like hey, we are business, we don't want to have anything to do with data technology, so data goes into the technology side. And sometimes you see that the data executive doesn't get that a peer status with the other executives. There would be a CTO, and then the CDO or the CIO would be reporting into that. I've seen such funny structures here in a lot of Australian organizations. But the most important revolution that's happening now is the Agile Revolution. I know we've been hearing the word Agile for many decades now. I remember I took a training in Agile back in 2002. But roll forward to the present times, what's really happening is the concept of partnership between business and technology is becoming stronger. Not just for data science, for all of the technologies and data related activities. Now, people are beginning to understand that in order to get a proper return on investment from all the data investments, the business needs to be closely working with data. So, business and the technology or the data field, they have to be operating like two sides of the same coin. Otherwise, the organizational strategies are not going to be met. So, with the view strengthening that data is an organizational asset, and disciplines like data science, business intelligence, and whatever not, they're all becoming business enablers. So this is something that I have been diligently practicing whenever I had the opportunities to frame and execute data strategies for organizations. Is that when I do the data strategy, I make sure that it's heavily coupled with the organizational strategy, because I need a source point when I write my data strategy. And the source point comes from the organizational strategy, where the organization wants to go in the 1, 2, 3 years forward. And then for all the initiatives, data initiatives, I make sure there is a strong executive sponsorship. And then I also make sure that when the teams come together to deliver, there's a strong business participation. So, in terms of the agile scrums or showcases or whatever cadences that we do, I make sure that there's heavy business participation. If there's no business people showing up, the meeting will not go forward, because it's about a journey that we undertake together as one team. And I think if we follow small cadence operating principles, then it goes a long way into building that trust. Because imagine business coming with us when the initiatives get executed, rather than them just coming and looking at the endpoint and saying, hey, I wanted you to build a car, but you've built a bullock cart. So it becomes really difficult. So just joining together, partnership of the business and the data and the technology teams is really important to succeeding in the data science field.
Okay. Okay, guys, we've got at the moment more than 30 people watching us. So, guys, if you've got any question, please mention it in the comment section, and I'm definitely going to take the question for you guys. So, please put the question in the comment section, and we're waiting for the question. Anyways, um, next section, which is around skills. So, what kind of skills are you seeing in the marketplace? And it is a very open-ended question, because then I saw the smile on Hima's face. Um, Data science, what I've seen over the years is that people have changed titles, and suddenly there is a data scientist everywhere. But what have you seen in the marketplace? I will start with Goda this time. So, Goda, what have you seen? Um, what kind of skills are you seeing? And also tell us, what kind of skills are you looking for? Because there are lots of beginners who are watching this as well, and they want to become data scientists. What they should be focusing on? So talk about what do you see and what do you expect. So both the angles.
So when we talk about skills, I would like to differentiate tools from skills, right? So typically, when people talk about data science, the first question that comes is, okay, what are the tools I need to learn? What are the languages? What are the frameworks, right? So given those are tools, the real skills that actually delivers impact in an organization, there are two kinds of skills. When we talk about analytical skills, it's about how you can convert a raw data into an insight and deliver it to a business person to enable make some decisions. You're enabling humans to make decisions, right? So when it comes to data science,
Uh, we've lost we've lost Goda. I think we should. Hema, let me come to you. And in the meantime, we'll see if we can patch back Goda.
Sure.
What do you see? What do you see in the market? What kind of skills do you see? And also, what do you see? What do you expect when you are hiring people?
Absolutely. I think, with all due respect, we must not forget the fact that data science is still a pretty young and upcoming field. So it's very difficult to find data scientists with the level of expertise that we would like them to have. And sometimes it's funny to see a lot of job adverts which come looking for data scientists who have like 7, 8, 10 years of data scientist delivery experience and things like that, which is not practically possible. In terms of skills, as Goda hinted, the most important thing is for people to be data savvy, right? So, Shailendra, I think you can easily relate when I say back in the times when business intelligence and the data warehousing concepts were picking up, all
Mhm.
people did was to learn a tool. Like they would learn an ETL tool or they would learn a visualization tool, and they would brand themselves as data warehousing specialists
Yep,
or
yep, yep, yep.
visualization specialists, right? So, um, please focus on the concepts, the logic, the academia behind a particular field, because you don't need to know any tools to become an expert in a certain field. It's about the knowledge or the passion for data. We need to look at data is the truth. Data is the only currency in organizations. um, how do When we look at data, we need to understand that data is going to be the organizational asset, and how do we build the skills to work with data, to talk with data, to get all the information that data is blaringly throwing at us. How do we convert the data into the insights? How do we curate the data? And as good data citizens, what are the operating principles that I must be aware of? And how do I make sure that I protect the data when I work with it? So these are a lot of data centric skills. You should become a data savvy person to begin with. So that's what I would call the first group of skills that I'd look for, not just in data scientists, but for any person or any professional that aspires to have a career in the data field. The second thing, particularly talking about data scientists, obviously you need to be strong in the mathematics and the science that underpins the world of data science, as in the different algorithms, the different techniques, the different statistical models that you should be aware of. Because when a problem comes up, there is the business context, and there's a context of the customer, there's the context of the market, and there's a context of a limited or a bounty of data that the organization might have already collected. So when all these facets come together, you should be a subject matter expert that can determine the right statistical technique or the mathematical technique that you would apply in order to deliver the insights or the outputs from the data. So that strong theoretical background is also required. And the third thing is the business knowledge or the domain knowledge. So this is a very passionate point for me, because I want the upcoming data scientists to be industry agnostic. Industry agnostic meaning you should look at data subjectively as data, and then you should add the context of a particular domain to it. For instance, the way data gets created, the data attributes get generated in a superannuation industry is quite different to the data that's generated in a telco industry. But despite the differences, data is still data, and you should approach the data with the agnostic, industry agnostic approach. At the same time, you should also consider the rigmaroles of a particular sector, and then approach the data in that fashion to deliver the output for that particular client or the industry. So these are the three different types of skills that I would strongly encourage aspiring data science or data professionals to focus on. So just to summarize, the first one is being data aware, being data literate on all the skills that go with it. The second thing is, if you want to be a data scientist, focus on the statistical and the mathematical knowledge that should go underpin it. And then the third thing is any domain or industry or business expertise that you can gain along with the soft skills that go with it.
Okay, that's good. I'll summarize it later, but we have to go back to Goda. We lost to Goda.
yeah,
So
I dropped out.
Yeah, no problems. Technology. So tell us, what do you see, and and what kind of people approach you when they're talking about data science? So walk us through that.
Yeah, actually, Hema put it very well. In a way, the way I would summarize it is the real skill of the data scientist is, first you need to know a set of techniques or tools, but the real skill is being able to match it to the business problem. So how do you look at a domain and a problem of the business that exists and map it to the mathematical tool that needs to solve it? How do you say something, for example, is a clustering problem, or how do you say I need to build a classifier for this? Because I see either people focusing on specific languages or tools, and which is importing certain libraries and making it work, but the real skill is able to actually do match the following as to which problem needs what kind of an application to really solve it. And like Hema mentioned, having the theoretical background and the fundamental strong behind it will help you leverage the tool to solve this specific problem, because every problem comes with its own nuances. So if you don't know the algorithm behind it deep enough, you will not be able to kind of tune it to make it to work and solve this particular problem, right? So it's, to summarize, it's
Yeah,
like match the following and know in depth of what you are applying for a problem.
Okay, that's very well said. I think we all agree on the fact that they need data, statistics knowledge. And it's a funny story that I always talk on this show as well, is that people who've come to me and said, I want to do data science, and you ask them, well, I think we all studied in India at some point in time. I asked them, in year 10, what did you do with the stats chapter? And 95% of those people would say, because it was a optional question, I actually left that question. I didn't even go through the chapter. And these are the same guys now who want to become data scientists. So it's
that's true.
it is what it is. But anyways, that is also driving the thinking for people to think about and tell them that stats is a core component of analytics. As I call it, data science is a later term, but that's the core of it. But to know that, you need to understand the data component, how to get data, how to access that data. As Hema rightly said, you need to be data aware to understand the possibility of data, i.e., what kind of data do you see and what do you do with it when you actually get that data? And then be able to communicate. And that is very important. I think we miss that whole thing around communication, of explaining that to the business so that they can actually understand what has been built and what has been created so that they can use it. And I think these are the key core skills that an individual should have, but you can't find all three of them in one person, because
That's
um,
right.
what I've seen is that a very good statistician will struggle in getting data, writing SQLs, and a very good statistician may not be a very good communicator, like most of us. So I think that is an important aspect of people to understand that these three things won't exist in one person. So
Yeah.
you will find people with a level of a degree of plus and minus in all these three skills and how they take it. Do you guys agree with me on that?
Look, absolutely. That's one thing I'm really committed to. To all the aspiring analytics data science professionals that are watching the show and that connect with me for mentoring. um, I always make sure that I give opportunities to the right people who have the basic knowledge in the relevant field, and exhibit the right attitude. Like I said, data science is still an up and coming field, and I wouldn't expect to see people with a PhD degree who have like 10 plus years of delivering data science initiatives. People don't exist. I mean, unicorns, they don't exist. So I am committed to hiring professionals with the right background, but with the right attitude. And I'm open to giving them opportunities and help them learn on the job. And this is where I would request the leaders in the data science field. There's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders to make sure that we are able to guide these up and coming professionals, because we just can't be pushing problems towards their end and silently watch them to deliver it. We need to be, quite aware of the problems being dealt with, and we need to be able to roll up our sleeves when needed and sit with the team and guide them towards delivering the outcome. So data science leaders also have to be equipped with the right sort of skills to support the early stage analytics professionals.
Yeah, I think you've got it right here. And yeah, there are quite a few. Well, I would say there are people who've worked in the industry for 10, 20 years, because things have changed significantly in the sense that you've got people who were analytics people, and they became, and the term data science came into existence quite recently, 5, 6 years ago. And so what was going on behind the scenes, and people need to learn that everyone has to learn in this space and grow as they go. Another question that comes to mind, and I think we've lost Goda again, and by the time we get her back, what why do you see very few women in this data science space as well? And I am struggling to find that, because as I collate three ladies from different parts of data science into one session every next Thursday, it becomes a challenge to find those ladies. So why do you see
That's
that
true.
that there are very few ladies in the data science environment, Hima?
Yeah, Shailendra, that's an interesting question, and coincidentally, since the 8th of March, marking the International Women's Day, I've been speaking in a lot of events about this very specific question. And let me expand your question a little bit. Is it only in the data science field? Is it? I mean, you don't you see a dearth of women in a lot of fields, including the generic technology, and how many women go on to do doctorate studies? How many women even pursue their studies? How many women even continue to work in a career, leave alone data science career? I think there are a lot of internal and external factors that can be attributed to this less number of women in any field we're talking about. So the first thing is, generally, I think women are a bit intimidated by technology or pursuing technology, because they think they have to perform lifelong learning and they have to be constantly in touch with technology, grading certifications, going on courses. And sometimes they think it's a bit difficult to keep up, given that the role of a woman is actually 360 degrees. And I'm proud to say that, because we have to run the family, and we have to manage career. And personally, I think we have a lot of motherly instincts that take over once we get into the family life. And when it comes to prioritizing things, we always tend to prioritize family over work, or if you have passion for technology or studies, and following your passion, so everything gets a secondary priority compared to family, right? So I
Yep.
think this is where I would always look up to the organizations. I mean, I really laud Google, Facebook, and Amazon, and all the modern sort of organizations where they encourage a lot of remote working, and they have brought in a lot of HR policies that are quite women friendly, organizational policies that are quite women friendly. And maybe that's why you see at least a slight growth in the number of women getting into these fields. And um, the most important thing comes from within. We need to feel motivated as women. I mean, if you don't have the motivation, doesn't matter the amount of external support coming from the organizations or from your mentors or from your peers, they cannot help in any way. We need to keep that inner urge, inner passion burning, and we need to be ready to follow the lead, and propel ourselves forward. And the other important thing is, there needs to be a sort of women coming together that's always been lacking. The sisterhood, a lot of women communicating and connecting with each other, sharing their experiences and calling out, how they have been able to sustain in a particular field for all these years, and what are the changes happening. And it's very important for women to keep communicating, because otherwise a problem that a woman faces seems to be quite big just from her perspective, but when she shares it with others, and it becomes, oh, I'm not the only one going through the problem. Everybody goes through childbirth. Everybody has, time management issues, and sometimes you have to put your me time at the back. So when we start communicating and connecting with more women, things become a bit easier, and you feel more encouraged to take things on. And what's really heartening to know is that a lot of women-centric groups have started coming up. There are a lot of events, and there are a lot of LinkedIn groups. So women usually don't need to physically go to a group and be present there. They can be connected remotely to there, and there are a lot of mentors and counselors available that you can speak to, industry leaders that you can look up to, easily accessible via LinkedIn. So I think it's up to the women now. There's a seat for you at the table. Nobody is taking the seat away from you. Just make sure that it's not you that's taking the seat away from yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So, Goda, you back? Sorry, we lost you again. The question was around the fact that why there are very few women in the data science space. As I'm trying to find women to come participate in the show, it becomes a bit of a challenge. So, tell us, how do you see and how is Swiggy actually reacting to that? I should throw a number here that at SAP we've got 33% women rate at the moment. So we have gone to that level. So tell us, Goda. Goda, can you hear us? Hello, Goda.
Sorry, sorry, your last line was breaking. I couldn't hear the last line.
I said, what do you see in your organization? How are they supporting women to uh, get into the data science space and drive that?
Right. So first of all, to mention, like I've been at Swiggy for the last 2 months, right? And especially because of the COVID situation, I spent less time at the office. But overall, across the organizations, if I have to speak, I agree with Hema that it's not only data science. This is kind of a question that is asked across different forums of technology in general, right? Why are there less women, especially in more leadership positions, etc. And I think it is due to like all the reasons that Hema mentioned, but it is also about the internal change that is required to be able to communicate clearly, know what is required, and be open about it as you go through the different phases. And I've always seen the environment and people to be more accommodating and also understanding, but it's only about speaking up and saying what is required. And you cannot expect everyone to automatically understand and adjust to things, I think, but being upfront and asking about it has always helped me, is what I would say.
Okay.
That,
Okay.
that is true. If I can add one thing, Shalendra, it was interesting that you mentioned some numbers. I think a lot of organizations these days are quite interested in achieving gender balance through certain percentages of the workforce or some numbers in leadership positions. But personally, to me, gender diversity doesn't stop there, because it's about achieving a balance. Like there are 10 men in senior leadership and I have got 10 women, so I tick the box. No, it doesn't stop there. I think the organization needs to become more inclusive, because if you look at the workplaces, they still remain particularly catering to men and their ways of working. And sometimes, as Goda rightly said, women need to feel empowered to stand up, because if we don't do that, we're not changing the workplaces, we're not changing the world for the future women workforce. So we have to take it upon ourselves to kind of challenge the different ways of working and make sure that there's no gender affiliation towards ways of working, and it must become women friendly workplaces. So for instance, a simple thing as sometimes some of the big corporate meetings or get-togethers happen pretty much after 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, and I've had to stand up and say that, sorry, I can't do this because I got to go back home and put food on the table, or I need to sit with my son who's doing HSC, because that's more important to me than spending 6:30 onwards at work for a dinner meeting or something like that. And sometimes I find that some organizations take it okay. Otherwise, they think, oh, she's just one female. If she doesn't attend the meeting, that's fine. We're still going ahead with the meeting at 6:30 p.m. So these sort of things have to be challenged, and they must change, because like I always say, a woman has to satisfy a 360-degree profile. Being a mother, being a wife, being the daughter, being at work, and taking care of herself, and a lot of things that go on with the kids. and some other passions and hobbies that you have to follow. So this just doesn't apply to women, it also applies to men. Like, we all have to satisfy the 360-degree profile, and work is just one aspect of it. So workplaces must become more women friendly.
Okay, good stuff. Can I very quickly ask one question to the audience? Guys, I know there are around about, what, 35 people now watching us. Guys, what are the skills that you see, and what have you been told by um, other mentors to look at and drive that skill set to become a successful data scientist? Please mention that in the comment section. And also, if you've got a question for our two experts, please put that in the comment section and we'll take them up. Okay, the last section, or not the second last section, there's another last section is the question and answers. And we'll take those questions. But let's talk about success stories. So, girls, you are both you've successfully delivered lots of projects. So, tell us one project or two projects that you think were two good projects, and you thought that, this is my project and has made a huge difference to the organization. Monetary, monetary doesn't matter. It should, what actually brought, or you felt proud about? So would you like to share one of the projects? I'll go with Goda again. Goda, are you still there? Goda, okay. There is a challenge, so I'll come back to Hema again. Hema?
Sure. Yeah. So I think I should say that I've been fortunate to work with a lot of analytics professionals to deliver some impactful initiatives, large and small, where success could be defined as things we achieved in various shapes and forms. As in, we were able to monetize data, as in realizing some benefits in terms of dollars straight away. Otherwise, success has come in terms of improved automation or simplifying something that the organization has been struggling with for a while. So that's success to us also. And sometimes even expanding the access base for businesses to certain data sets, I would consider that success, because imagine a business that has been making decisions in a very short-sighted manner using just a handful of data sets. And if we were able to widen the horizon of data sets that were within their reach, that was even success to us. So along those lines, I've been fortunate to work with some of the major financial services organizations, like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, that have been driven by regulatory needs to invest in data science and hence deliver data science outcomes. So a couple of things that immediately come to mind. For one of the major financial services, we built a data science model to identify the propensity of customers to purchase or acquire the services. And when building the model, we made sure that it was as dynamic as possible, taking into account some real-time customer parameters rather than depending on parameters that were stale. So keeping it a dynamic model really helped the organization respond to the market changes and the customer changes, in terms of the customer preferences, attributes, and the behavior. So that kind of showed a lot of improvement in the customer retention and customer renewal parameters, and we were literally able to measure it within a span of 6 months. The other success story was for a lending business where we used data science and advanced analytics to accurately identify high-risk customers and remove a lot of bias towards segmenting the customers, and in turn fine-tune the credit scoring practices. So the risk and exposure for the organization was considerably reduced. So there have been a lot of golden nuggets that we have delivered here and there, but we have also been able to rise it to the enterprise level, especially the credit scoring practices for the large lender.
Okay. Good. What I was asking was around the success stories that you have had. You've delivered projects and you thought you were proud of them. So please share a couple of success stories that you've delivered.
Right. So from a success story perspective, like both at Ola and several other startups, the real measure of success for me is when you deliver an impact through data science, which gets you the seat at the table for the next time you want to do something, right? Because
Yep.
uh, when you start off a function, it's all hype. Yeah, we need data science, we need AI. But the real win for data science as a function is when, as business, as founders, you're seeing impact and you're developing that belief in this function to deliver, longer term gains for the business. And the next time when you have a problem or you're trying to achieve a goal, there is a seat at the table for data science to drive that decision making, and you almost become part of the every business. You're embedded into the business conversations. And we saw this happening. Like, I worked with a few mobility startups in the space where we could bring down the bottom line cost almost by 30 to 40%, right? And within a span of 3 months, through good optimization methods that we implemented. And this happened even at Ola, and now I'm at Swiggy. By the time I joined, data science is kind of, it's an AI first company, so it's already at the center of the stage, involved in the decisions. It's kind of thriving on AI, is what I would say. So, very happy space of that, reaping the benefits of those success stories right now, is what I would say.
Okay, okay, that's fine. A question for you guys, and I don't think we uh, can actually escape that, and that's around COVID-19. What, in your point of view, how can data science help go to identify or help cure COVID-19? And I think that's a question that I ask every time to everyone, because we are in the middle of COVID-19, and all being told to stay at home, and we're staying at home. So tell us, what do you think? I'll start with Goda this time before we lose you again.
Right. So your question is on how help solve COVID-19, or it's about the impact of COVID-19 on businesses?
How can data science help in either curing or any other way helping COVID-19 situation?
Right. So there are two parts to it. I have a few friends who have been focusing on like the forecasting exercise, leveraging the data that we have about how COVID has progressed so far, and modeling the spread of it, and giving the alerting, and how could the next few months look like. Even providing that insight for you to kind of take actions, and helping different institutions work on it, is something that I know many of my friends are doing. But apart from that, the deeper impact of this is going to be on all the businesses that are there, and how every business is kind of going into that phase where you have gone minus X% in revenue, and even unsure how the future is going to look like.
Yep.
And one of the key roles that data can play here is, we do expect this phase to change the behavior of customers altogether. And the it needs a repivoting of the entire business, almost going back to the 0 to 1 phase, right? For every company out there. And data is the indicator, and what you do during this phase is going to provide that indicators as to how 3 months down the line the behavior is going to look. How does your product need to change for that? All these, the strategic decisions you make at this time need to be kind of powered with the analytical insights coming with data, right? And I'm seeing that happening.
Okay. Hema, what's your point of view in solving the COVID-19 situation?
Sure. Well said, Goda. I think I'd just like to add a few more perspectives to that. The first thing is, I think maybe COVID has happened to to kind of bolster the field of data science, I would say, because ever since COVID started happening and it started spreading to countries, we saw a lot of data scientists or data analytic projections being released on a daily basis. And I was really impressed with one, a small kid, 17 or 18-year-old kid, that provided the most accurate statistic about the spread and the daily, how many people were cured and how many people were actually contracting the disease, and the rate of spread and everything. So it was a simple visualization or an insight. And there were also a lot of advanced models predicting the spread, exactly coming up with how many thousands of people are going to be impacted by a certain date, in the next 6 to 12 months. And all of that was fabulous. And I think it highlighted the importance of, the value that data can add to any situation or any business problem. And looking at the impact of COVID, Definitely, as Goda highlighted, a lot of businesses have been impacted, and I think they have been forced to rethink the way they conduct businesses. They are forced to rethink the way they provide customer service. And a lot of productivity efficiencies are being reviewed. What are the areas in which optimizations can happen? What are the ways in which remote working can be enabled so that the products and services delivered by the companies can be seamless? And it should there was an interesting LinkedIn post that I was reading this morning which said a minute of silence to all the managers who did not like remote working, who did not encourage their staff to do remote working, but now they are forced to send the top benefits from remote working. COVID has really done that, thanks to COVID. So remote working is becoming the norm of the day, which I think it's a liberalization from a personal and from a work perspective, because imagine a lot of people just hogging the roads and hogging the public transport, spending an hour and a half in the morning and the evening just to be present at a workplace. And I think we have just quashed that norm. We don't have to be there. We can be efficient working from anywhere, because this is the real digital way of working. And we connect through Mural to conduct workshops, and we use Zoom, we use Teams, we have so many tools. So now we are all coming to converge to the point that we can deliver as efficiently by working remotely as we did in the workplaces. And and the most important thing is, it is all introducing productivity efficiencies and a lot of cost savings by not putting bumps on seats. A lot of saving from a real estate perspective, a lot of saving from taking care of people when you put them in a building, and people get a lot of time back, so they can focus on doing a lot of things. And women should feel encouraged as well. You can aspire to pick up whatever technology or data roles, because remote working is more and more becoming the norm. And it's really nice to see a lot of organizations making announcements that about 60, 70, 80% of their roles will be made remote following COVID. So it's actually a lot of lessons learned, and I hope that we take them all for making the working experience really better for all of us alike.
In fact, I could share one story which is around COVID, where data science was very impactful, and I read somewhere where they're able to predict the chances of a person contracting COVID by checking their temperatures and everything, and where they don't need actually to um, you know uh, isolate the person even if they're a bit of high temperature. Lots of what do you say, variables that get into that model to predict whether the customer is like whether the individual is likely to have a to contract COVID or not, which is quite interesting. And yeah, so these are the kind of things that are happening in the market which I've seen.
Yeah, and just to add to that, another interesting thing I'm looking forward to is, I know a lot of medical facilities and governments around the world are really busy in controlling the spread of the epidemic and doing the best in taking care of their citizens. But I think along the way, a lot of hospitals have been collecting a lot of data about the patients walking in, people testing positive or not positive with COVID, right? So imagine the amount of data that's being collected across the world.
Mm.
And so that's one aspect about the COVID attributes for a person. And then superimposed on it would be the real medical history of the person, and then the demographics of the person, and then the genetics of a person. So when all of these facets come together, imagine the amount of data that we are going to be privy to. And there's going to be a very large amount of analytics activities to be run on these data sets that will start throwing more light on not just COVID, but any such sort of endemic diseases that start in one country and end up spreading, because we need to be more prepared for dealing with such things in the future, because we can't be operating in the lockdown mode forever. And with all the modes of traffic opening up, including air and water traffic, we just need to be more careful and understand how these diseases spread and what makes people vulnerable and how can people be protected should something else like this come up. So I'm really excited about a lot of analytics, data science activities happening on the data that's been accumulated by all of the healthcare institutions and hospitals and the medical camps that have come up for COVID detection.
Okay, that's brilliant. So we've covered a lot of questions. Now let's get to the question and answers from the audience. But before that, I want to make two comments. One is, guys, this is your last chance, the audience, to put in your questions in, and we will take those questions after this. You will not get these two beautiful ladies to answer any of those questions. So please, please, please ask the question now if you have any, or you will miss the chance. That's the first part. The second part, both of you, is I request both of you to actually nominate two or three ladies that you think um, would people would benefit from hearing, the ladies in data science. So just try and get a couple of names, two names, three names, and we will try reach out to them to get them onto the show. So that's my request to both of you. Please nominate two to three people, two to three women in data science, so they can be here. Okay, let's get to the question and answers. Let's start from the top. Okay, the first question is from Facebook by Josh Starlin. And he's saying, what applications of data science in remote sensing? Anyone want to take that question?
It's not like clear to me what is meant here. Like all the sensor data of.
Yeah, I think he's talking about all the sensor data that you get. What kind of analytics and what kind of outcomes that you've seen, if you've seen any, from the sensor data.
Actually, Goda, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Hema.
Hema, you go ahead.
Okay, for some reason I can't hear her, so I'm not sure if she's going to talk.
No, she's saying you go ahead.
Okay, look, remote sensing, it's just the same sort of data science and analytics that you would run on analytics data. But one of the interesting projects that I was part of, in the last decade was sensing the data from, sensitive machines and, some sort of nuclear reactors. So it's like a constant feedback loop that you run, and you start measuring the operational and the performance parameters for those machines or gadgetries that you're monitoring. So two aspects. First is by running data science and analytics on that, you can prevent catastrophic incidents from happening. At the same time, you can channel that data to run preventive maintenance, so that you can control or reduce the expenses towards replacing the parts or damage to the machinery or things like that. Earlier, before the data science came into picture, people were using supersonic scanning kind of things to look at material defects and everything. But here, with data science, it's possible to kind of deploy IoT sensors, whatever you have, and constantly collect the data back, real time or near real time. And you can monitor that, and you can create models that can accurately predict, how many minutes or months or years are left before a particular part will kind of need replacement. Or it can advise you about what is the next step you have to take in terms of preventive maintenance, so that you don't have to replace the part, but that you can interfere at the right time to repair it or reinforce it, so you're spending less on that.
Okay.
As similar applications in agriculture as well, right? Because in agriculture, sensing your soil quality, the weather sensing, all of these come into picture in terms of your crop yield prediction and how that plays a role in your crop insurance. Because majority, of Indians are in the agriculture field, and that's kind of the major application I see of remote sensing.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, agriculture. Okay, next question is from Niharika. By the way, this is the first time I've been able to pull the LinkedIn questions onto the show. So I'm so glad that I don't have to pick my iPad and start reading the question. So LinkedIn has just made that change last night. So this is the first time we're doing this. Niharika SN, she's saying, I have an experience on Python for a year. How do I fetch a job on data science, machine learning, as I'm pursuing course currently on Simply Learn? Who wants to go first? Duda?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, of course, Python is a tool that is used vastly by data scientists. So it's good you have a hand on the tools. Um, in terms of getting a job, like we mentioned about, I think Hema has already covered from a skill set perspective. In terms of landing the job, especially when people shift careers, what I've seen is mostly internally finding an opportunity within your organization helps a lot, because you know the domain, you know the business, so it is easier for you to have the initial impact. And also I've seen people who kind of join for internships in data science, take a break, or do freelancing projects for a few startups to kind of build the right experience in the field, as coursework versus hands-on experience on a project is kind of a very different gamut of experience, right? So in order to get that first experience, like I've seen people doing internships, freelancing, or internal movement within the current organization.
Emma, you want to add to that?
Sorry, Shailendra, I can't hear Goda speaking for some reason, but um, I think what I would strongly recommend is just 1 year of Python. Again, it's focusing on a particular tool or a language. But if you would like to be a true data scientist, I'd strongly recommend getting into the conceptual side of things, as in understanding the statistics and maths behind it, getting to know the different techniques, and how does statistic put that different view on the data, because data has been lying around for 30, 40, 50 years, and ever since the advent of mainframes and the following computers, data has been accumulating in some place. But how come this data science putting a different perspective on that? So that's what you need to focus on learning. So get yourself a good grip on the statistical and the mathematical techniques behind dealing with data. And because this is really important for anybody aspiring to play in the data field, to understand how to connect the data items, because data sits discrete entities, but when you bring it together, it starts telling a beautiful story. So you need to understand how to become a storyteller with data. So that can't be achieved without having a strong hold of the data science field. So please focus on that, and alongside the Python and R, whatever you pick up, it'll help you to weave that story. It will help you to do the analysis, and it'll help you to produce the outcome, and then you can stitch that story together. So focus on everything, and also on the soft skills that are required for every data professional, because you you as a data professional will create outcomes for the business. So how do you stand up in front of the business, in front of the managers and executives, and start pitching your story? Sometimes you will be required to build a data science or data practice from scratch. So how do you win the business sponsorship? By weaving a beautiful story about a prototype or a POC that you or your team have put together. So soft skills are really important. You have to be a good communicator, a good storyteller, that can bring out the value of data, and make the organization invest in the data. So don't discount one for the other. Being sound in technical skills, as well as in communications, and as well as a good subject matter expert, I think all three are important for you to become a data scientist. And when you start picking up the skills, there will be organizations definitely looking forward to employ people at a junior level, or even in your existing organization. You can work with like-minded professionals to create that movement called data science if it doesn't already exist, or you can join as an apprentice in the team, and you can pick up and learn on the job. But the learning never stops until you become a seasoned data science professional, and even
Yes.
after.
And to add to that, and I think I say that in every episode of this series, and then this kind of a question comes in, is that today there is so much of data available. There are tools that are freely available. All you need to do is define a problem and start trying to solve that with all the data available. That will give you the experience, the hands-on experience that you miss most of the time, and will take you forward. I'll tell you, our problem was when we were learning, we were doing stuff. We didn't have a tool. Um, to get SaaS, we had to pay $250,000, and today R is downloaded free.
That's true.
Python is free. So you've got all the infrastructure available to you today to learn. All you need is a problem, and you need data. And that data is available on everywhere. And your passion to learn. And if you've got that passion to learn, things will open up and you start solving some problems, and they'll go on. What I will do is after the session, I will put in various resources that I have seen, the books, good books that I've seen, which could be valuable to you to actually define those things. And I'll put it in the description section. Maybe that is helpful for you guys going forward. But I always suggest people to take up a business problem or create a business problem in your mind, document it, take the data, take the tool, and start going with it. The experience you get out of that, no one can beat. Who knows? You may come up with a product which is state of the art, and you may be selling that product out to some large organization, and you become Instagram, or you become, WhatsApp. Who knows? So that's what my point of view is. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, just a quick thing. Thanks for bringing up the the online resources and groups available. So, was it Niharika who asked the
Yeah,
question? Did I? Yeah. So I think Niharika, you should also look for a lot of meetup groups, because I know across the world there are a lot of active meetup groups that try to pick up business problems or create problems on their own and practically try to solve the problem as a group. So what you get out of participating in the meetup group is that you're not trying to climb the hill alone. There's a group that works with you. So there's a lot of peer learning that happens. And a lot of people from diverse industry backgrounds bring their perspectives. And that's a very enriched learning that you get through. And in addition to that, there are a lot of women focused groups, as in women in data science, women in big data, women in analytics. Look at my LinkedIn profile, please, and feel free to join a few of the groups. And in fact, one of the events I'm really looking forward to hold after the COVID restrictions relax is a Women in Data Science event, where I'm just trying to bring in seasoned, veterans from the education and from the industry sectors. The point that I'm trying to highlight is to create clear pathways for students right from high school through to college, how to land in data professions. Um, I think, referring to one of your questions earlier, Shailendra, why is there a dearth of women in the technology, STEM fields, and data science and all that? I think one of the main reasons is a lack of awareness. And sometimes, if you miss out in high school, to pick up a data course or a data degree, how do you then come back to the data field? I think there's not a lot of clarity that exists with people about the pathways to becoming a data professional. So I think I'm just trying to bring seasoned professionals and veterans together and try to influence the academic curriculum as well to make it more data centric, because things like Python can be taught right in schools because it's just a programming language. Just like how they learn English or Spanish, they can as well learn Python and R. And they can pick up small problems that exist within their academic circles, like how to manage schools, how to reduce the infrastructure costs for schools, and how to make schools green buildings. So there are a lot of practical problems they can solve right from the high school times through to college and becoming data professionals. So, stay tuned. I will announce these in my, LinkedIn posts, and feel free to participate in those events. And the groups that I spoke about, the Women in Big Data and Women in Data Science, they hold a lot of datathon sessions that people around the world are free to participate. So that'll be a great learning experience for you.
Okay, can I request both of you guys to actually, if you know any resources, to put that in the comment section where people can learn and get up to speed. Uh, you've got the comment section in LinkedIn and Facebook. I'll send you the links. So if you can just put in the comments there, and, that'll be of great help for the beginning. I think that is one of the needs, and that will be good support as well. Okay.
Sure.
Next question or comment is from Vashisht Akshat, and he says AI. I thought it was hi. Hi Vashisht, how are you? But did that mean hi or AI? I don't know. We don't understand the question. If you're still online and you're watching us, please define the question again, and we will take that up. Another message from Dipti Mohanty. Hi Dipti, how are you? She's saying communication skills, mathematical and statistical knowledge, knowledge about data, knowledge about data you're working for. I am still not getting the question, but I think
This
what
is
she
a summary of what Hema spoke regarding this.
maybe she's just done a summary of what Hema
Yeah.
said. On
Yeah.
the other side of things, I think communication skills are very important. Mathematical and statistical knowledge is the key, and it's data that you're using. So, Dipti, if it was a comment, I think it was very well taken, and I think you've summarized it quite nicely. Um, there is a message on Twitter from Vitus Jube, and he's saying nice analysis with clarity, and that was Hema when you were explaining around the skill sets. Okay, then
Thank you.
I've got another question from Harshni Tarigopula. Hi Harshni, how are you? And she's saying, will you suggest data science as new career to start again after a career gap of more than a year? Now, that's a very, very interesting question. So, Goda, you want to take first?
Yeah, actually, career gap or not, like according to me, the same thing that we spoke to Niharika applies here in terms of when you're restarting your career after a gap, the kind of skills that you need to acquire and then give that a fresh start by working hands-on a few problems, which kind of builds your resume and skill set to apply for new opportunities. I think it kind of the same things apply as what we were speaking for Niharika's question here. If that is your interest area and that indeed is what you're passionate about, whatever it is, you need to start with that after a career gap as well.
Okay. Hema, you want to add something?
Sure. I think making a career change or reintroducing yourself into a career after a break. I think the first thing is it's quite normal. Lots of people do that. So first of all, get out of that mindset. 1 year is just a year, and you had to take it because it was something important. Yeah. So practically, what I would recommend is if you've already been in the data field, then you just continue working on that, pick up the skills that you need, and take it forward. But if you're switching into data field from some other field, you just got to become a student again. It's as simple as that. Because sometimes I've seen a lot of professionals just come into the data field and they've already spent about 10 years or 15 years in another field, but they are not patient enough to accept the fact that they may have 15 years of experience built on something else, but data is a new dimension, data is a new area, that they have to be patient and transform themselves into a new student with all the enthusiasm and pick things forward. And having said that, it's not also for refuting that whatever skills you've picked up in any other field is easily transferable, because as professionals, you would have been managing stakeholders, you would have been delivering outcomes, and all of it applies to the data field, just that you're going to use data as a means to deliver the outcomes. So rest assured that you've already built a lot of transferable skills by being in the other field. It's just about focusing and accepting the fact that you're going to be a student picking up the new skills for a while. And like I said, there are a lot of means, and you could reach out to any of us here in the show as well, because we actively do mentoring. And connect with me on LinkedIn if you need any support. I'm happy to do that. I'm quite passionate about mentoring women and helping them launch themselves into the field of data, and a lot of resources online. Keep following that, and definitely you are going to reach your goal. Yeah.
Okay. So those were the questions, and I think we had a good share of questions for everyone, and we've answered those. I would like to ask you one last question. It's not a question; it's a comment I want from you. If you were to give me a one-liner about what do you think about data science, women in data science, and any message that you want to leave with the audience, then this is the last moment that you've got. So both of you, I'll start with Goda first and then Emma. I'm just doing it because of the alphabetical order. I just realized that G comes before H. So Goda, your turn.
The one liner I always use for data science is making data useful for business, right?
Mhm.
So that involves everything, all the skill sets that we have spoken about and all the processes that we have spoken about. So it's like a 360-degree to make it work and make data useful. So focus on the skill sets, focus on the communication, focus on the processes, and then any organization, whether small or big, will be able to achieve the impact and deliver the outcomes for the business.
Okay. Emma? What's your last message to the
Sure.
audience?
Yeah, I think data is the truth. Data has been around for long, just that it's come into limelight now. But data has always been capturing a lot of story about whatever has been happening with mankind, with organizations, with businesses, and everything. So there's a lot of things waiting to happen in the data field. So feel free and have the confidence to pick up data as a career, and especially if you're a very detail oriented person, data is the career path for you. I'd like to say that. And being a woman, I know that we are very detail oriented, and data. I think it's a very appropriate field for women because we need detail oriented people to play in the data field. And Shailendra can relate to that. When we started, we did not have a lot of role models around in the data space, and there were not a lot of practical resources. Getting access to the tools and techniques, everything was very expensive, and a lot of things sat only in the textbooks. So we had to use a lot of our mental visualization to imagine and chart a path forward, which is really difficult. But now you have all the resources and everything is available in front of you. So why not?
Perfect. Thank you, both of you. Thank you very much for your time and all the effort that you've put in. And as I said, this particular episode we pulled off from nowhere. I think we had so many issues. First we had Lail having a problem, and then Hema, your internet was not working, and then Goda, you kept on breaking in and out. So, but it was very good session in the end. Thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it. Now, two things from you. One is please get into the comment section and provide those resources that we agreed, and also please mention names of 3 women in data science that should come on this show next time, and I'll try to bring them. Wherever they're sitting in the world, I will hound them and tell them to come onto the show. So that's my problem. Just mention that in the comment section and I will reach out to them. Thank you very much, both of you, and thank you for your time.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Shailendra. Thanks, Goda. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Same here. Emma.
Bye.
Thank you.
So, guys, that was Goda from Swiggy and Hema, who's an ex-KPMG, ex-Westpac. It was great to have those 2 ladies here. They did a great job answering those difficult questions. And also, thank you all for putting in all those questions in there. And, they were quite exciting questions as well. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will be back next week with another guest. Well, actually, I've got few guests next week. Next week, I think I've got 4 or 5 of those. So keep tune in to the show at 3 p.m. AEST on Tuesday and Thursday. Like every week, I'll be back next week. So bye now. Take care.